have a pretty cool talk planned tonight. To my left, on both sides, but Tiago here is one of our earlier, larger customers from Digibee. He's the field CTO now. So kind of working on the dark side, on the sales side of engineering now. And then, of course, many of you know Mirko, founder of Dash0. We're going to be talking a little bit about Tiago and Digibee's journey to Dash0.
Yep.
Good to go?
Good to go.
Awesome. Let's start us off. Let's just do a little background and intro. Do you want to hold the mic up here and just jump right in?
So I'm from Digibee. Digibee is an integration platform as a service. We pretty much connect whatever systems you have in your company, and we can connect to APIs, external systems, and make all these data contexts work together between systems, right? It's off. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now? Oh, way better. Yeah. So, Digibee, integration platform as a service. We pretty much have a platform that you can connect different systems. You're able to build, deploy, and monitor your integrations using our platform. Pretty much every company that has more than 2 systems needs to connect them together. Instead of doing point-to-point integration, you work with us. And we support mission-critical systems from hundreds of customers around the world, pretty strong in the financial sector. I'm one of the founding engineers. I run the platform for the past 5 years, and now I'm changing to the sales side, but I was still ahead of it when we decided to move to Dash0. Yeah.
Yeah, hi. I'm Mirko, co-founder and CEO of Dash0. I'm 26 years in observability.
Wow.
So way too long. This is my second company. The first was Instana. We sold to IBM. Then I told my wife that I'm done with observability, and here I am again. I just love the space, and especially when I saw OpenTelemetry, and we can talk about that, how you see that, but I like this open standard, and I wanted to build a platform that was from the ground up built on OpenTelemetry. That's what we did with Dash0, and then of course we added Agentic AI on top and other things, but the core of a platform is an OpenTelemetry based observability platform.
Tiago, I guess more for you. So, you've been with Digibee since it was like $1 million in ARR. It's now 20+ million ARR. So there for some time. As far as kind of your guys' observability journey, I know it's been a couple different stages. Could you walk us through, as you guys scaled, how it started, and kind of then when you moved into leveraging Datadog and some other tools?
Yeah, so I assumed this role when we were doing pretty much $1 million ARR, and we are times 20 now. So yeah, there was a lot of growth, and we adopted a lot of new customers, onboarded a lot of new customers, and the challenge came, right? Platform had to scale out to handle this demand, and at the beginning, we were working pretty much with ELK stack, right? So we had a very big Elasticsearch cluster, Prometheus cluster. It was kind of centralized inside of the cluster, and we had to scale. We scaled to multiple clusters. Then observability started becoming a bottleneck. I'm talking about 5 years ago. We decided we need to move to a platform, a SaaS platform, and we chose Datadog at the time to centralize all these metrics and signals so our SREs could act upon it. When an incident happens, in such a big environment, incidents happens a lot of times, right? But we kept Elasticsearch and Prometheus as the back end of our platform to serve monitoring to our customers. They also need to see how their integrations were operating, right? This was 5 years ago. And more recently, Datadog's cost spiked. We decided to look elsewhere, right? Till we found Mirko, actually, or one of the VCs introduced us. And yeah, we made the move pretty much 1 year ago. Almost nine months ago, probably.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. And yeah, so a lot of evolution since then, from the ELK stack, Prometheus, and then Datadog having a centralized view, and now moving everything to Dash0.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would start asking you about also OpenTelemetry, right? Because I'm a big fan, and I know that you haven't been on OpenTelemetry from day one, and you had to move. How was that experience moving from, I would say, a proprietary technology to OpenTelemetry? And how did the developers adopt it?
Yeah, to be honest, at the beginning, I was a bit skeptical, right? Our environment was mission critical, like we couldn't stop, we couldn't lose observability, I couldn't lose any sign. It was critical for me. So like moving to something else, I was very skeptical about it. But since day one, when we started the POC, actually Vitor was working with us, the CSM from Dash0, and I mean, we felt supported. So there was a lot of knowledge in him. He taught us a lot of stuff. And at the early stages of the POC, we saw an opportunity to deliver features for the platform on top of OpenTelemetry that we couldn't do with a proprietary code, right? So nowadays we can ship logs directly to our customers, ship metrics and traces directly to our customers using the same agents that we use to serve the platform. There is a challenge on moving, right, on changing the tech stack, but we felt supported. I think that's the most important thing. Your team was there. It was not like a robot or some AI trying to assume what I'm trying to do, right? And yeah, I think it took like pretty much almost 2 months since we started POCing and to roll out to production. And yeah, it was successful. We were able to deliver new features to customers. So nowadays I look back and I see that it was the right move to do, like adopting an open platform to do so.
Yeah, and I think that's important. I mean, you mentioned it, but I think you are an integration platform.
Yes.
And your customers also want to get insights into the integration platform on your platform, right? Yep. So you are not using OpenTelemetry only to monitor your system, but you're also giving that data to your customers so that they can leverage that. And because it's OpenTelemetry, they could also put it into their stack, right?
Exactly. And actually, when we started looking to Dash0, my goal was to move the ELK stack that we're using as the backend of the platform to Dash0. But like shortly, it became like move everything. And we were able to do. So nowadays, every customer that enters in our platform will see data coming from Dash0 platform. So it's pretty much like white label it. You know, although we also use the platform, the Dash0 UI to troubleshoot. Our SREs use that on a daily basis. Every time an incident happens, it's there that we do all the troubleshooting.
Yeah,
right.
And you're also now having all the data, right? Because I got briefed by Jack that you were highly sampling on Datadog for cost reasons, right? And now you essentially could turn that up and get more data into the platform.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So the cost was pretty much the main reason we decided to look outside. You know, when we started looking outside, our cost was like super high, and the market changed at some point. So margins became more important than they were before, right? And we were able to achieve like 50% cost reduction moving to Datadog, moving to Dash0. So pretty significantly. And we were also able to add new use cases. So pretty much we have all the data that we need to deliver to our customers and the data that we need to troubleshoot the platform and keep that environment up and running, right? Yeah. The SLA is super important. The environment is also like big, I would say. It's over 1,000 hosts. We are about to get to 20,000 pods in a Kubernetes environment, and it's distributed across 13 clusters. So yeah, in such a big environment, something will fail at some point. And you have to have the data, you have to have the signals.
And that's an interesting point because we were just discussing upfront who is the owner of observability, right? And you said you were SRE platform team, right? So who owns observability in Digibee and why?
Yeah. We started with the SRE team, so there was like a team specialized in infrastructure, but we did a move to shift left to deliver that data right in hands of the developers, right? So there is still an SRE team. They're still looking up for the platform, but nowadays when something bad happens, who kicks in is the developer, is like the engineering team responsible for that part of the system. We call it shift left, so now we have way more people working on it. And I mean, there's no better way to understand your software than dealing with production, right? The signals coming from production are the best ones to take decision and even like grow your product, deliver new features. So I think that was the right move. So nowadays it's very, very distributed. Every team understands the metrics they need to collect, and they are able to, using GitOps, change the metrics, change the collection, and deliver to our productive clusters.
Yeah, that's good. And I mean, development is changing heavily at the moment, right?
Right.
I mean, our teams are leveraging Cloud Code a lot, and I think that also changes how developers are consuming the data out of observability tools, right? We have an MCP server, we have a CLI, and it's an unprepared question, but I have to ask you, if developers are using it, are they leveraging AI and agentic for observability data too? And how do you see that evolving? And how do you see the usage of observability in your teams over time?
Yeah, we are using observability. We actually use Dash0's MCP server. I see that, especially in triage, the agents are very capable today. They can identify if a signal coming is noise, is not, is something that you have to act upon it, if something like that happened before. So we do have in the triage process, before firing the alarm, some agents enriching the data, trying to correlate stuff and giving to the SRE meaningful data so they can act upon. So I feel that this is still evolving. I'm pretty sure that we are going to get to a place where the agents will be able to change your production, so be more proactive and make moves inside of your production. Today we still have the human in the loop, right? For safety, pretty much. Yeah,
and we were talking last time with your CTO also that you want to develop agents in production, right, on top of the data to automate things, right? How do you? Yeah. What's the vision there?
Yeah, well, so this is a pretty new thing that we are doing there. So we developed a few agents that helps you to build integration, right? Build integration is just day one, right? You have to understand like the systems that you're connecting, the APIs, how to transform the data, how to enrich, what do you need on the other end. But it's still day one. Day two, you have to maintain that integration. The data will move, the systems will fail, the systems will change, will evolve. You need new signals, new kind of integration. So what we're developing is an agent that can look into those logs and metrics and signals and understand if something bad happened with your integration that you need to take action upon it. And actually, for an integration space, you don't need any human in the loop anymore. With the data that we are getting, with the signals that we are getting, the agent is able to change the integration, test it, collect new signs, understand if it's correct or not, and push it forward. So pretty much a digital worker, I would say. We're trying to avoid the name agent because it's confusing. A lot of things it's called agents now, right? So it's a digital worker that takes care of the whole integration for you. And without collecting the signals and understanding what the data that is in there, and it's impossible to do. So our data are living in Dash0 now. We need that data to take those decisions.
Yeah, we see that more and more get these requests from customers that they want to build agents on top of the production data, right? The signals that you get with logs, metrics, traces, and all the others. And we are releasing pretty soon a workflow platform. So one of the things we are building is that you get triggers. Trigger could be a new deployment, could be an alert or something. And then based on those triggers, you can trigger workflows, agentic workflows, that you can then use to handle things in production.
Yeah, amazing. I feel that this is the next level, like taking action and without firing the alarm, without getting your SRE in the call, right? I mean, I've been in operations pretty much my whole life, so waking up in the middle of the night to fix a problem is definitely a burden. You will get burnout, right? As much as you can take the noise out, make the life of the SRE easier, you'll be able to invest that money in new features that will bring more money, more customers, you know? So I think that's the right move. I would love to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. I would open it up also a little bit. Any questions here from you guys to Tiago or myself that we can answer?
You had mentioned the shift left from SREs to like making it more of a everybody's job to like, was that just like a policy shift, cultural shift? Is that tooling? Like what helps drive that? I'm at the stage of just starting to do that, and that's, so I'm curious what helps.
So pretty much a little bit of all of it. So we had to educate developers on how important is that production data, that production science, and how important was to keep the platform up. So I started with a weekly meeting where I was discussing customers' use case and how important that is. So I put in the mind of everyone that they need to be cautious about production, that it's everyone's job to keep the platform up and running, not only the SRE. And the results were really good because you have a limited team, right? You have limited resources, and when you brought that, like you divide the burden to everyone. But it required a lot of tooling as well. It's not only cultural shift, and pretty much like requesting access to make changes, like reviewing all the review process. The CI/CD had to adapt, and it was a big shift, but it's worth it. If you're doing this kind of movement, I strongly advise you to continue to push forward to it. Now, we still have the SREs there, but they are thinking about like, so different capacities, like FinOps, their role changed a little bit, right? So it's a good move. Yeah. I think she...
For an agent, it has a memory loop. Like for a human, we have postmortems to kind of learn lessons learned, and for an agent, you can feed that back into memory. But I guess, how do you think about the challenges of agentic memory and how that humans benefit from a postmortem more than
humans? So the question was, how do you enhance the memory of the agents with all the learnings that you have from all postmortems, right? So it's the same thing as having like an employee, right? Actually, we were doing that at the early beginning. We started the same weekly meeting, we were discussing all postmortems, and we were learning with that. We were building context, we were building action plans, and things like should not have the same incident anymore, right? And I'm pretty sure that this data will be very helpful for whatever agent comes to help us. Pretty sure of that. And there is more on top of this. Like, it's not only the production science. I think that this data is important, but you also need like access to the source code. Your agent needs to understand the source code, needs to understand the kind of environment that you're running on, if it's like containerized or something else, So yeah, I mean, this is the current challenge of the observability world.
I also have to say, when we started with Agent0, that's kind of our agent. We only looked at the observability data. So we had logs, metrics, traces, and we pretty much figured out that's not enough. And so we are adding now much more context for the agent. That could be postmortems that somebody writes, right? Could be a Notion, could be documents, could be your task management like a Jira or Linear that we get access to, see the comments, could be Slack, could be, so I think the more context we can give the agent, the more it can learn, the better the results will be. Yeah.
You know what I love about Agent0? I never had to write a PromQL anymore. I still struggle with that. I mean, I was good at that at some point, but nowadays I can remember the syntax, and I mean,
me neither.
The agent is super good on doing so.
Do you have to deal with like unwanted noise? We also have a really big environment to monitor at my organization, and there's we use Dynatrace, and they're like default alerting policies because I feel like these tools are set up for kind of shared alerting, maybe set up by an SRE, but it often ends up being where like the default alerting policies are just unwanted noise a lot, and then it feels like the value of the tools just diminishes, where it's like doing what it's meant to. Do you have to face those challenges?
So the question was around how we handle like custom alerting.
Alerting.
Yeah, alerting in general, right?
Yeah. Does it ever feel like noise, where you get notifications?
Most of the time. I mean, when you start building your alerts, they will probably like trigger for nothing. It's an ongoing process of refining it, right? So that's where I see like a lot of help from agents. So we onboarded a tool to do that together with Dash0. Dash0 sends the sign. This tool pretty much controls all the on-call engineers, how they shift, and kicks in the agent to understand if that's a real problem or not. But I mean, noise is a real problem, and you have to iterate over it. I tend to say that the first time that the developer is waking up during the night, he will try to avoid that as much as possible. So he will refine the alert. If it was like a false positive, he will refine until the alert gets go. So I think it's a maturity thing, you know. Although our environment is super big, our applications doesn't differ that much, right? So it's pretty much the same application across 18,000, 19,000 pods. So we were able to establish that knowledge on what is important, what is noise, and what is not, right? So I think that comes with maturity. And agents will help a lot in that.
Yeah, but I also have to say, like in 26 years of observability, vendors have always tried to reduce the noise, and it has never worked, right? I mean, when I was in Instana, we had like a lot of AI and machine learning to do baselining, whatever, and try to do good alerting, and to be very honest, it never worked, right? Because there's always something that happens, especially if something happens, then I call this a Christmas tree, right? Then every alert gets triggered, right? And then everything is on fire, and you don't really know where to look at, right? And you have so many false positives then, and I haven't seen a real solution for that. I think the best solution is that you keep this an iterative process and figure out where you set your alerts and how to really configure them in a meaningful way, right?
Yep.
So, but from a tool perspective, so we don't have a solution for it, right? To be honest.
Yeah, and different motions, right? Me at my position, I wanted the engineers to be alert as much as possible at the beginning, because I mean I was afraid of losing a customer, of something weird happened with the environment and affect customers' production, right? That's the most important thing for me at that point. And the developers, they went the other way. So so this comes back to the shift left. Once they get waken up, once they get accountable for that, they will try to avoid the situations that generate signals, you know. And at the end, you end up with a much stronger software and like more fail-proof.
So, good question. Okay. Specifically about your transition from Datadog to Dash0, did you have to solve a data residency problem for historical data that you already had in Datadog for your customers?
So no, the data that we store for customers, we only retain that for 1 month. And we pretty much run the first 2 months Datadog and Dash0 together.
Right.
That was a good thing about OpenTelemetry as well. Like we were able to have different pods sending the data, and yeah, so we run that together for a while. So at the time we shift, all the data was there. The data, at least the amount of data that we need to keep, right? I think that Datadog was holding the data, the metrics data for like 1.5 years. Sorry.
So none of the customers needed to hold it for longer than
No. So what we tell customers is that if they have different needs, so if they need to store the data for longer, then what they need to do is the feature that we deliver actually with the OpenTelemetry collectors. So they have to shift this logs data to their own system, right, and hold the data for themselves. Even though we have this data from customers, they are pretty much like signals and like logs and metrics about the integration, and we gave them a lot of tooling to anonymize the data. So, I mean, it's sensitive data at the end of the day, right? So we have to be careful about it. And about data residency, you said sovereignty, right?
No, residency. I mean,
Residency.
yeah, specifically like data resides within Datadog. When you're using it, they kind of have it, right?
Yeah.
And they build all the dashboards and everything from that. And from my experience, we needed to go sometimes look a year back even, at the data.
Oh, that happened.
So that was like that's where I was coming from. So if you shift, if you move, right, what do you do with that? Is there a solution or?
Yeah. We still have access to that Datadog instance. I mean, there is no much more activity since last year, so there is nothing new. But if we need to go back to the metrics, we can get. But I mean, we turned the page. We are now like the data that we need to retain. It's there in Dash0. Yeah.
So, like with agent taking over the world, right? So. Yeah, so it's like the development is going like exponential, right? And right now, like the observability has evolved from Datadog world to like Dash0 kind of world, where it's standardized, and it's going to another direction. So where there's no human in the loop, right? It's gonna be like agent to agent. Agents communicate between each other. They take decisions and go. Fix problems and so on. That's the direction the industry is moving towards, right? And you can see that security and like SOC, like the security operations center, SRE, two different roles. It's kind of merging, right? So how do you it's a question to Dash0 as well. So how do you, have you ever thought about how to tackle such? Because the world is changing every day, right? So
Yeah, definitely is. Do you want to take this?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I totally agree that I think that observability and security in parts will convert. And we started, I think Aviat is here, right? Somewhere. There's Aviat. Aviat, he's of the part of the team who is developing our first SIEM solution on top of the data. So we will come out with some security use cases pretty soon. And because we see that conversion, especially driven by agentic. Then if at one point we have no humans in the loop, I think that will be a very big change, right? Because at that point we also need to change the data, right? Because today, to be very honest, all the data we send, a log, for example, that the developer sends is made for a human to read, right? If you think about a normal log, and I think once you start changing that and the log is not written for a human anymore, but for another agent, it will look different, right? And so I can see that over time, observability data will change totally because the consumer will not be a human anymore. It will be an agent, right? But that I haven't seen that starting in OpenTelemetry or other specs yet, so that we really discuss, okay, how will the world look like when, it's similar in coding, right? I mean, code is also built for more or less humans, coders. At one point, maybe the code we develop will not be readable for humans anymore. I don't know, right? So I think that's something that I can see happening, but I would say we are still far away from that at the moment.
I tend to agree. I think that we are still far away. If you see like benchmarks for SREs taking care of production, you don't need to go that far. If you look to Anthropic's Claude uptime, it's super bad, right? I mean, we have an integration pipeline can call an LLM, right? And we purposely developed it being able to call multiple LLMs because they might fail. They fail all the time, right? So I still think that we are a bit far off, like to delegating SRE's work to agents. We will get there eventually. Yeah, we will. And a lot of things will change, definitely. But talking about agents, now I have a question for you. Talking about agents, the whole OpenTelemetry movement standardized the way we look into observability, what a metrics is, what a logs is, what a trace is. How that help on building agents? I mean, on adding AI to it. Like, was it easier than looking to different protocols, and how that helped?
I mean, first of all, we are using a standard model, right? I mean, we are using Claude in in our system. And the good thing is, because Claude is trained on the internet, essentially, it's also trained on OpenTelemetry, right? Because OpenTelemetry is an open standard, the documentation is out there, there's tons of Reddit threads, etc. All the agents, the collector, everything is open source. So if you send a trace, or if you copy paste an OpenTelemetry trace into Claude or ChatGPT, they will understand it, right? Because they understand the semantic convention, they understand what the text means, because it's documented, it's there, right? So that's the biggest advantage. If you are on OpenTelemetry, all those LLMs can basically work out of the box, and they can also do correlation between different tools. Because if you get a trace from Dash0 and you have an OpenTelemetry log out of Datadog, let's say, they can still match it because the tags are standardized and they can correlate things based on the semantic convention, right? So that's a big benefit for using OpenTelemetry, because the LLMs are really trained on that data.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And one step towards the agentic world. Yeah.
I have a question. So you mentioned a little while back that you're starting to look at, so you realize that telemetry is not enough for your agent, for example, and you're trying to get more context in these. So can you share any findings or experiences when you started to think about adding more context to the agent around context blow up or even dynamic context switching for agents? Anything you can share?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, I think there are two things about context. One is the context that you give to the LLM. When I talk about context, it's first which data do I look at when I want to analyze a problem, right? So that's the first thing. So if you get, I don't know, let's say there is a new error coming up, right, for a service. Now you want to understand why. If I give, for example, the agent access to your Jira or Linear, it can maybe find a task that's correlated database change, now I have a database error, right? If you give access to code, it can see which code change could be a possible cause. If I give access to CI/CD events, it can see, oh, actually there was a new deployment happening with a new artifact. I can see the task for it and the code change. Now the agent can suggest an action, rolling back or doing a fix. So I think adding context just gives your agent more ways of understanding the problem with context, and also giving you suggestions how to fix it, right? So I think that's how we, and basically that's the way we went for it, right? We added tasks, we added code, we added CI/CD platforms, we added documentation, but I would say for what we also learned is for every customer this is different, right? You can have your own systems, your own metadata, your own things, so you cannot rely on standard integrations. You have to open the system up so that customers can add their own context, which is important to solve problems.
How do you guys think about navigating tension with the OpenTelemetry standard, in particular gaps it has? So if you guys wanted to offer profiling, it's not in the standard yet. So how are you guys planning? I feel like you guys are relatively young, so you probably have had a lot of great features you can build on the data that's there, but you'll start heading into new territory. How do you think about navigating limitations of the standards?
It's sometimes tough, right? Because profiling, we are working at the moment. We have an internal version, but as you said, the standard is not there yet, and it's changing. So it's hard to build on top of the standard, right? So there are two things we are doing right now. We just raised a larger Series B, and I have Michele, who is leading that open source thing for us. He's hiring a lot of people, and we will have more people in the standardization groups working on OpenTelemetry to drive the standard in the direction that we need, right? And support and make it more stable. So we will invest heavily into the standard from our side to make sure that the standard is where we need it. But that's more a long term. We will not fix profiling in the next 2 months. And so what that means for us is we have to come up with an alternative for the time that we don't have the standard ready, right? Which is not optimal, but it is the only way for us at the moment to deal with that problem.
You'll build a proprietary standard that goes ahead
Yes.
of it, and then
Yes.
backfill it.
Yes. We will try to either backfill it, right, or even give it to the community, or at one point when it is stable, we have to migrate away from our proprietary technology.
Please add me to the beta. Okay.
Yeah.
And for you, I guess then transitioning from Datadog, which, like, were you giving up features to move to a newer product and something on a different standard? That was okay, or you guys weren't leaning into what was, yeah.
We did a feature comparison side by side. Of course, that for the features that mattered for us at the time, right? And we achieved like 95% compatibility on what we were using, right? And this 5% that were off, like we asked them at the early beginning. He got back to me with like a prototype of what I needed 2 weeks later. And so I said that before, I was feeling supported, you know? I brought a problem, they brought a solution. And we were iterating towards that. But yeah, it was a different tool to use. One of the things that I was afraid is people were used to the Datadog UI, and even people that were not developers. Like there were dashboards that business people were using, right? And I mean, we had to decide to give up on that data, you know, and like not have that user there anymore in the observability tool anymore. And surprisingly, without me like pushing towards that, today I discovered that we have 50 more users than the engineering team using Dash0 platform. So they found a way. They have the dashboards there and they are using. I was afraid that they couldn't, you know, but I was wrong. So yes, there was like some stuff that we need to match. At the price point that we had, it was something that it was okay for me to give up, you know. And I think I have to tell this. Jack was the account executive taking care of Digibee. And once he came up, first time that he came up with a price, I said, dude, you were wrong. Go back and read the numbers again. Like, it's not that. And it was, surprisingly. So, yeah, I mean, but I'm definitely like, it's a product that is maturing very, very fast, catching up. I think that the feature that we were missing was synthetics. It was delivered right away. And yeah, I mean, they will catch up. I'm pretty sure of it.
Do you mind taking a step back and just describing how workflows in observability workflows different with Dash0 as opposed to Datadog?
I mean, like the workflow in terms of how the user is using it? I would say that most of the workflows, how you use the tools, will not be very different, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, observability is a pretty much a set of things that you are doing, and you will require any tool to provide you with that feature set, right? We do have a few things where I think we are unique. For example, triage is one of those things. So if you try to figure, if you have a lot of data and you want to get to the root cause, then we provide you tools, statistical tools, to get to the root cause of the problem pretty much with one click, right? And that's for example a workflow where when you analyze things, we give you the right tools to get to root causes pretty quickly, right? That's a thing. Another thing is how we apply, for example, AI for analyzing or recognizing patterns and logs, which you do mostly in other tools with regex, where you define regular expressions. And we do that. We use LLMs to parse those logs automatically and detect those patterns automatically. So I think there are things where you use the tool differently, but overall I would say there's a high correlation between the use case and the workflows, how you use Datadog or us or New Relic.
I'm just curious to follow up. I mean, for example, you mentioned agents or just an LLM interface, right? You have that. So with Datadog, it's a closed system. I can't ask it, what do you observe? Or what does this mean, right? Just this meaning this set of metrics, right? These are the metrics. What do you see? Is this, I sort of have this interaction. Is that an interface that exists, right, for Dash0?
Yeah, we have such an interface, right? Agent0 is an interface where you can communicate and you can ask questions give me analyze the service, analyze an error patterns, give me or yesterday I tried myself, because the funny part is that's kind of new with agents, and if you use LLMs, you're building an interface for the customer, and you kind of don't know all your functionality you're releasing with it, right? Because it's a lot in the LLM, so you can ask questions and you can try to figure out if it's answering or not. And yesterday I tried to analyze if it can help me optimize the utilization and of a Kubernetes cluster, and it came up with a pretty good answer, right? So yes, that's interface, but to be fair, Datadog has something similar, right? They have Bits AI, which is their agentic platform, which works very similar to what we are providing. I mean, the details can be different, right? And the results can be different, and I can't really tell you how we compare to Bits AI, right? Because I'm not so familiar with it, but I would, from an abstract point of view, they have similar functionality. Yeah.
I can chime in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can chime into that. One of these days I was pulled into an incident. It was like one of the customers that I work closely to. And I saw the team posting these like context, like very, very big context with a lot of data, and it was like very assertive. And I was like, where are they getting this from? And I saw like Dash0's, so you can now ask directly from the signal, from the alert, like to get you an answer and give you the context of that, right? And actually it was pretty accurate. I was surprised like how good it was. And the team was already using, I didn't even know that you have launched that. It was fun to see that. So the interface came out of the platform, and that's a good thing. Like, it's now conversational. So they pick up the text that was generated, they publish somewhere else, and people were iterating. So you can go back and give more context to the agent. So it's hard to understand how this interface will be. How are we going to interact with that?
I think the interface is going to change. It used to be text-based, right? It's changing to, I think it's going to change into voice AI type, even at the enterprise level. So there are a lot of startups which are basically building for enterprises, because in the future, like as a CTO or head of DevOps or SRE, you might want to get quick answers, right? And you don't want to like go play around with the dashboard a lot. So I think the industry is also moving towards voice AI in enterprises as well. So the interface is going to change in that direction too, I think.
Definitely. I have to tell you that this is scary for me. Like, I really love to understand the data that is backing decisions. So, I mean, not having that interface that I'm used to. At the beginning, it was a struggle. Like, I had to get used to a new interface to read like what is happening, right? So, I mean, I think I'm going to still struggle with that for a little while. I like to see the data back in the decision, to go to the system, to dig, to do my own queries. I love to do the queries. With Agent0, I don't PromQL anymore. But yeah, I'm quite scared about this change.
Yeah, are there any challenges with how, because I've used OTel, but it lumps the entire service or application into like one service name or whatever, right? Whereas like when you get discovery with Dynatrace, it splits like a single Java application into 4 different entities or whatever, which like the golden signals like that get detected from background threads are different than like your actual service. I don't know how Datadog works, but like I feel like losing that if it was OTel native would pose challenges.
So you mean like tagging the signals to understand where it's coming from?
So when the Dynatrace agent discovers a Java application, like a Spring Boot Java service, it splits the service entities into like different types, and if you've ever written Java code, there are like REST controllers, and so those REST controllers are individual services that are different like entities or whatever. I think with like OTel, you don't get that, right? I mean, it's ultimately so
you get the same. Pretty much you can split up the services in the same way, right? There is this tag service name, which is kind of the semantic convention for a service, and you can tag a call, for example, the REST calls by the controller name, right? And then you have a service per controller, or you have a service for a batch job, and then it's the same functionality. Yeah.
Tagging it's really important. When you have all that signals, I mean, from 19,000 containers, there is a lot of data coming in. If you don't have the right tags to pinpoint what is happening, it's going to become harder. So I think that comes back to that iterative motion of getting more mature on your code, on your source code, on your signals, on your alerting, tagging things properly, you know, pretty much like the SRE nature maturing in the teams, you know.
And I think the good thing is, taking your Spring Boot application example, that they have OpenTelemetry integrated now, right? So you don't even need an agent to get that data, because your Spring Boot application will emit OpenTelemetry signals automatically, right? So that's kind of the cool thing, that frameworks like Spring could integrate the instrumentation into the framework, because now you have a standard, and they can use OpenTelemetry. Yeah.
And the good part about being on OpenTelemetry is that you can send this data tagged by you anywhere. It's not something that was inferred by a third party, you know. So, I mean, I think you get more control over the decisions, the tagging decisions, the grouping decisions and dimensions.
Question. What are your thoughts on, like, basically both of you, like, experience with how much you can trust the results from Agent0? Like, how much hallucinations you've observed, and how has the behavior for SREs changed when they look at the hypotheses coming from the agent? Like, do you look at the data every single time? Or you starting to trust it more and more? Like, what are your experiences?
I use more to do PromQL queries, and I think that the funny stuff that they do, it's the agent will tell you, like, will tell you what the query is, will test the query, will analyze the results, and the agent itself will tell you how close it is to the right result. I imagine that is the same thing for, like, triage.
Yeah, I mean, it's not 100%, right? That's the nature of the technology at the moment. So I would say I would always validate what I'm reading with. I mean, today it's a very different topic, but I talked to our SDRs, our sales team, and they asked me, should we use LLMs to outreach to customers, right? And I said, sure, you can do that, but never turn your brain off, right? Because I get so many emails these days, or I see people using LLMs, and then they turn the brain off and they just copy paste it into an email, and you are like, okay, I don't know, I got a lot of congratulations to Series A, but we raised Series B, right? So, and you could see people don't care anymore, right? I think it's the same when you do these triages. I think just based on my experience when I tested, the results are pretty good. I'm more or less amazed of how good they are sometimes, right? But sometimes they are also totally off, right? So you still have to think about it, learn how to prompt correctly, because sometimes it's also the prompt that's not perfect and you get the result you prompted. But I would say we are not at the stage yet where you can turn your brain off, right? That's
yeah.
And even if the prompt is correct, hallucination is still there.
Still there.
There's always a finite probability that's, yeah.
So just a quick follow-up on that. Is there something in your platform that you kind of take feedback from the users and feed back to your agents?
Yeah, we have the standardized feedback also with thumbs up, thumbs down. Funny part is I don't know the right statistic, but I think it was clicked 7 times overall. So
it was not
people,
me. I didn't
people are not really using it, right? But you have.
Use it when they hate something.
Yeah, but we are analyzing the prompts and the results. So we do look at it, and we do analyze it, and we do optimize based on that, and we look at the behavior. But we have this manual feedback button, but it's not really used.
You mentioned you were leveraging Dash0 to expose observability to the customers. You call it like white labeling Dash0. literally how you're using it? Or could you talk more about how you made it a customer-facing?
No, actually, we are really white labeling it. So we, instead of giving them access to Dash0, we are calling Dash0 APIs and shaping the data like as integration specialists would look into it, you know, and showing to our customers inside of our platform.
So you have your own UI and stuff like that. But
we
the
have
API backing it is
exactly. We were doing that with Prometheus and Elasticsearch before, and we shipped everything to Dash0, and we are using Dash0 APIs to get the data and present to our customers. I think there was one here.
Yeah, question. So I'm an engineering manager, and I've got some developers who've been told that basically developers are going to start owning microservices more, distributed systems like AWS, stuff like that. Admittedly, I come back from primarily a Salesforce background, where a lot of observability is just kind of baked into the system. So my question for you is, have you seen use cases where Salesforce is augmented by Dash0, and is there anything that you think you do better than Salesforce?
I don't know if I understood the question there.
You mean monitoring a Salesforce instance or like a...
Like a managed package, but yeah, like in general.
I mean, if you have things like Salesforce or managed components, the benefit of OpenTelemetry is that also there, and Salesforce is supporting OpenTelemetry, or Shopify or whatever is supporting OpenTelemetry. We work with Vercel, for example. They also use OpenTelemetry. That OpenTelemetry is the way they can provide you with the data, right? Or SAP or whatever. So we see more and more adoption. I know that AWS, for example, I think we talked about Lambda and X-Ray. X-Ray was the proprietary format. Now it's being changed to OpenTelemetry. So I think we will see more and more vendors and platforms changing to OpenTelemetry so that you can utilize that data, right? But if you would have a component, a second-party component that does not support OpenTelemetry, we would basically be blind, right, at the moment.
Like one more question, maybe? One more? Yeah.
Sure. Just switching gears from, say, I'm interested. I'm an engineering manager who owns 20 services, right? I want to come in the morning and see what we previously did to the LK, combine, have a dashboard and say, what were the 10 most serious issues that happened past day? Do you have something that would just give it to me?
What was it?
If I want to see the top 10 issues that happened, I want to prioritize, right?
Oh, the issues. So you want to see top 10 issues in your system?
In my system over the past.
I mean, that's exactly the question you would ask Agent0, right? So you could ask Agent0, please give me a prioritized list of the top 10 issues I have in my system. You would get it, right? That's a really good use case of Agent0, yes.
It's already there.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. I don't know if this is going to
Thank
work.
you,
but
yeah.
Thank you guys both for doing this. Tiago, thanks for coming up from Miami to speak
Count on
to
me.
everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate you all being here.
Thank you. Great.
Feel free to hang around.